People say a father truly sees his child only twice, the day the child is born, and the day the world tries to break them. For Adrian Hale, a millionaire who built an empire with his own hands, this second moment arrived on a cold Thursday morning, when he stepped out of his car, expecting an ordinary school meeting, and instead found his only son standing outside the prestigious street. Edward's Academy, dusty, bruised, and dressed in rags like a servant forced to bow before the sneering parents of richer, more powerful families. What happened next would shake the entire city, rewrite the school's legacy, and expose the hidden cruelty wealth can hide behind polished gates. But to understand how a respected academy collapsed in one afternoon, and how one father's fury became his son's salvation, you must walk with them from the beginning. Chapter 1. Adrian Hale always believed his son, 11-year-old Lucas, lived a life far brighter than the one he had endured growing up. Adrian had clawed his way out of poverty, built a logistics empire, and sworn that his boy would never know humiliation, hunger, or fear. The school he chose for Lucas, St. Edward's Academy, was famous for discipline, excellence, and a long list of alumni who now ruled banks, companies, even political offices. Adrian trusted the school's reputation more than he trusted his own instincts. He thought structure would make Lucas strong. He thought privilege would make him confident. He had no idea it was crushing him instead. That Thursday morning, Adrian arrived at the academy because of a message: "Please come. Your son has been involved in an incident." No details, no tone, nothing to suggest disaster. Adrian expected some mischievous prank, maybe a broken window or an argument with another student. Lucas was gentle, shy, never aggressive. Trouble clung to other children, not him. As the gates opened and Adrian drove inside, he noticed a strange cluster near the entrance, a group of wealthy parents laughing, some pointing toward the courtyard with mocking amusement. He didn't understand what drew their attention until the crowd parted just enough for him to see a small figure standing alone. Lucas, but not in his uniform. He was in torn janitor clothes. His knees were scraped, dirt smeared his hands, his shirt hung loose like it had been yanked off someone bigger. His hair was wet, someone had thrown water on him. And worst of all, Lucas stood holding a metal bucket and mop, trembling as a group of older boys jeered at him as though he were some school servant forced to clean up their mess. Adrian froze in place. His heart stopped beating for a full second. The world went silent. He stepped closer, and the boy's frightened eyes lifted, eyes that recognized him but seemed afraid to hope. "Dad, I didn't do anything," Lucas whispered. Before Adrian could respond, a stern voice boomed from behind him. The school's deputy headmaster, Mr. Rowan, walked forward with the stiff pride of a man who thought he owned the building. "Ah, Mr. Hale, good you're here. Your son was punished for disobedience and lack of respect. The uniform was confiscated for disciplinary reasons. He is being taught responsibility." Adrian stared at the man, stunned, unable to process the absurdity of the explanation. "You made my son dress like this," he said quietly, dangerously. Mr. Rowan shrugged. "He needs toughening. And perhaps you, being a busy businessman, haven't taught him proper humility." Lucas flinched at the words. Adrian felt something inside him snap. A crowd of parents watched with idle amusement, whispering, waiting for the wealthy businessman to apologize, as if humiliation were normal, as if privilege gave them the right to crush a child's spirit. Adrian saw their smirks, heard their judgment, and in that moment he realized something he had ignored for too long: wealth doesn't protect innocence. It only masks cruelty. Adrian crouched and took the bucket from Lucas's shaking hands. "You're coming with me," he said softly, pulling his son close. "No one touches you again." Rowan stepped forward. "Mr. Hale, your son cannot leave. He has 3 hours of cleaning left. If you remove him without permission, we may consider his enrollment." Adrian rose slowly, eyes burning with a fury that made the whole courtyard fall silent. "Enrollment," he said. "Oh, you don't need to worry about that. Because starting today, this school will never enroll another child again." The courtyard went still. People thought it was an empty threat. They were wrong. What Adrian did next would shock everyone, and alter the course of the academy forever. Chapter 2. Adrian carried Lucas to the car, slamming the door gently behind him. The boy trembled as though expecting Rowan to come after them, expecting punishment for daring to be rescued. Adrian's chest tightened painfully. He had missed so much. He had trusted the school too easily. He had believed the brochures and slogans more than the quiet sadness growing in his son's eyes these past months. "Lucas," he said softly, gripping his shoulders, "tell me everything. Every single thing." Lucas hesitated, eyes watering, afraid of causing trouble. But when Adrian placed a hand on his cheek and whispered, "You're safe now," the boy broke. Words spilled out with shaking breaths. How older boys had mocked him for being the scholarship kid, even though Adrian paid full tuition, just because he didn't brag about wealth. How teachers ignored the bullying. How Rowan forced him to learn respect by taking blame for things he never did. And the final humiliation, being forced to dress like a servant after refusing to give another boy his lunch money. Adrian listened without interrupting, feeling each word cut deeper than the last. He gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles, breathing through a storm of rage unlike anything he'd felt in years. But his anger took a shape, cold, precise, controlled. He didn't want revenge. He wanted justice. And he knew exactly how to get it. Adrian was not just a millionaire. He was the Academy's second largest donor. His logistics company transported essential materials to many of the board members' businesses. And, most importantly, the school was already under financial strain. Losing a donor of his scale would shatter them. But he didn't want to simply pull donations. He wanted the truth exposed. Within 1 hour, Adrian contacted 3 lawyers, 2 journalists, and a child rights investigator. Then he sent a message to the school board. "Emergency meeting. Today. Non-negotiable." When he arrived back at the academy, Lucas at his side, the board members were already gathered in the conference hall, faces tense, confused, some annoyed. Rowan stood there too, arms crossed, still confident, still clueless. Adrian placed a folder on the table. Inside were photos and video clips collected from students who had reached out to him after hearing what happened. Evidence of bullying, forced punishments, teachers mocking students, even Rowan threatening children into silence. Adrian's legal team had worked fast. The board watched in horrified silence. Rowan's face drained of color. Adrian spoke, voice calm yet thunderous beneath the surface. "This school prides itself on excellence. But this, what's in these files, is rot. Cruelty. Abuse masquerading as discipline. My son was humiliated publicly. But he is not the only one. And today, it ends." A board member cleared his throat. "Mr. Hale, what do you want?" Adrian looked around the room, then down at Lucas, who stood holding his hand tightly. "I want every child here to feel safe. I want justice. And I want accountability." He turned his gaze to Rowan. "Effective immediately. You are terminated." Rowan sputtered, shouting, threatening lawsuits, but the board, desperate to avoid public disaster, voted unanimously. He was escorted out as parents and students watched from the courtyard, some cheering, some stunned. But Adrian wasn't done. "I am acquiring the academy," he announced. "Every share, every asset, every authority, not to control it, but to rebuild it." The board gasped, but they knew he could. They knew they needed him. And they signed. By the time the sun set, Adrian Hale became the owner of St. Edward's Academy. He renamed it the Hale Institute for Growth and Integrity. Teachers who belittled students were dismissed. Counselors were hired. Anti-bullying units installed. Scholarships expanded. Students who once felt invisible were finally seen. And Lucas, he stood taller, walked prouder, and for the first time in months, smiled without fear. In the grand hall during the school's reopening, Adrian spoke to the students and parents. "We raise children to be kind, brave, and honest," he said. "If the world tries to break them, it is our duty to stand in the way, and rebuild the world instead." Adrian Hale drove away from the academy with a tension in his chest so heavy it felt like he was breathing through stone. Lucas sat in the passenger seat, silent, staring down at his dirt-stained hands as though they didn't belong to him. The car hummed softly, but the boy's quiet, shaky breaths were louder than the engine. Adrian glanced at him repeatedly, seeing how his son curled inward, shrinking into the seat like he wished he could disappear. The sight tore a deeper wound in Adrian's heart than any business failure or financial loss ever could. Halfway down the road, He pulled to the side, shifted the car into park, and turned to face Lucas fully. "Look at me, son," he said gently. Lucas lifted his head, eyes red but dry now, trying not to fall apart again. "Tell me everything," Adrian whispered. "Not just today, everything." Lucas blinked hard. For a long moment, he seemed unable to speak, as if words were locked behind fear. Then they began to slip out, hesitant at first, then faster, then trembling. He spoke of the boys in his class who cornered him in the hallways, the ones who mocked him for having an old backpack even though it was new but plain, chosen because Lucas had liked the color. He talked about the lunch money demands, about how refusing made him a problem student. He explained how teachers brushed off his complaints, how Rowan told him, boys will toughen each other, how other parents ignored him like he wasn't worth hearing. But the worst was learning Rowan had seen the bullying, had even encouraged it in subtle, cruel ways. Lucas's voice faltered. "They said I didn't belong there. They said I was just taking up space someone important deserved." His lip trembled. "I didn't want to bother you, Dad. You work so much. I didn't want to make trouble." Those words nearly shattered Adrian. He reached over and squeezed Lucas's hand firmly. "You never bother me. You never cause trouble. I'm the one who should have noticed sooner." Lucas swallowed hard, as if the simple reassurance was something he hadn't felt in months. Adrian pulled him into a protective embrace, one hand on the back of his head, holding him tightly against his chest. He felt the boy's shoulders shake, but he didn't let go, not until Lucas began to steady. When Adrian finally pulled away, his voice had changed. The warmth was still there, but beneath it was something sharper, something precise and icy. "Lucas, I promise you right now, nothing like this will ever happen again. Not to you, not to any kid in that place." Lucas nodded slowly, trusting him. But he didn't yet understand what his father had the power to do. Adrian did, and furious wasn't the right word. What he felt was deeper, something born from a lifetime of climbing from nothing, something sharpened by every struggle he had faced as a boy who was once bullied for having nothing. He had promised himself that if he ever gained power, he would never misuse it. But he would absolutely use it to protect the powerless. He wiped Lucas's face gently with a napkin, buckled him in, and drove home with a plan already forming, cold, organized, unstoppable. By the time they reached the house, Adrian had already texted 2 lawyers and voice messaged a journalist with the kind of tone that guaranteed immediate response. He wasn't a man who sent casual requests. When he demanded attention, the world listened. He led Lucas inside, got him warm clothes, made him hot chocolate just the way he liked, and set him up with cartoons. "I'll be right in the next room," Adrian said. "You can call me anytime." Lucas nodded. Adrian kissed the top of his head before stepping out. Then he transformed. He became the man who built an empire. The man who negotiated deals nobody else could close. The man who turned failures into stepping stones. He sat at his office desk, opened his laptop, and began sending messages with speed and precision. Within minutes, legal experts were reviewing the Academy's conduct. A child rights investigator confirmed she could arrive within the hour. 2 parents, learning what happened to Lucas through whispered messages from students, sent Adrian videos and screenshots of bullying incidents. Adrian forwarded everything to the investigator and then to a pair of education journalists who had been waiting for a scandal to expose in elite schools. Adrian didn't care about headlines. But he cared deeply about accountability. While evidence poured in, he drove Lucas back to the campus, not to hand him over, but to confront the institution directly. When he arrived at the administration building, the board members were already gathered around the long mahogany table, each of them looking more uncomfortable than the next. They were accustomed to parents who complained politely, not a powerful businessman walking in with proof of systemic abuse. Rowan was there too, arms crossed, wearing a thin smile that faded when he saw Adrian enter with his son. "Mr. Hill," he began stiffly, "I hope you've had time to reconsider." "Sit down," Adrian said. Rowan blinked, confused, insulted. "Excuse me." Adrian stepped forward. "Sit down." Every other board member froze. Something about Adrian's tone told them this was not a request. It was a warning. Rowan slowly lowered himself into a chair, trying to hide the tremor in his hands. Adrian placed a thick folder on the table. "This," He said, is everything you failed to